So today, during our explanation of the noble aspiration of excellent conduct, within this noble aspiration, until the ends of the blue sky, until the ends of sentient beings, until the ends of karma and afflictions, thus far the ends are of my afflictions, as it says in this verse. The great children of the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, the limits of their aspirations are the same as the limits of the sky. They're as vast as the Dharma expanse. They're the excellent, inexhaustible, and spontaneously present aspirations. And because they are this way, they have great compassion. So when we talk about there are many different types of minds, attitudes or minds that people have. Differences in minds and mental factors and so forth, and so there debate about whether, what mind is and what mental factors. But when we talk about mind, if we talk about it in terms of how, in terms of the way it presents itself, or the way, in terms of its essence, there are many different types of minds. And in terms of the different types of mind, the most important ones are the positive, virtuous minds. And the most important of these are compassion and wisdom. And because these are visual, so when they're given the names, when you talk about wisdom or prajna, it's pra means the best. So it's the best of all the minds, the best of all minds. When we talk about compassion in Tibetan is like the Lord of the heart. So sometimes we talk about the heart as the mind, right? So it's like the Lord or the King of the heart. So it's like the King of our mind. And so compassion, if we were to talk about compassion about ourselves as our minds as a country, compassion would be like the king. And because wisdom is so intelligent, he's like the minister. And when you have the king and the minister coming together, then they're able to govern the country well, and it will be prosperous. And in the same way, all of us individuals who wish to attain enlightenment, if we practice without compassion and wisdom ever being separated, we will be able to attain the path to liberation. And so for this reason, the Buddhist Dharma, in terms of its root, in terms of the root of Dharma, compassion is most important. It comes out of compassion. The Buddha did whatever was most beneficial for sentient beings. He didn't teach the Dharma thinking that his own ideas, his own thoughts were most important. He taught those who could understand it emptiness, and he didn't teach it to those who could not understand it. And the reason for this is that he taught what was most beneficial for his students, what was most understandable for the student. That is how he taught the Dharma. And so that is why the teachings of the Buddha are primarily opened up by compassion. And the Buddha also has the knowing and the unperturbable nature. And so these two come together, and they're like the root. And so for this reason, from now on, we need to give up violence, or we need to give harm to others. Now, when we talk about giving violence or giving up harming other beings, it doesn't mean that we're just not going to beat up other people. When you talk about not harming each other, what is the root that harming other people come out of? It comes out of our mind. It comes when our minds are under the control of the afflictions, when it's under the control of anger or hatred or grudges or under the control of greed. That is when we commit actions out of with our body and speech. And so in this way, when you talk about the 10 unvirtuous karmic paths, we have the 3 unvirtuous karmic paths of body, 4 of speech, and 3 of mind. But when we think about it, when we have grudges or anger and stuff, whether they actually harm another person, they actually harm ourselves because they prevent us from having happiness. We have no occasion to have any compassion or anything. And so many scholars say that before anger harms anyone else, it actually harms yourself first. So what actually harms another person is through the body and speech. And when we actually harm people, it's through the body and speech. But that harmful actions of our body and speech is moved by our mind. It's the root of it is our mind. And so in this way we have these 3 types of mental unvirtuous actions. And so these are actually the paths to karma. They're the paths that lead us to actions. And so in any case, we need to have we have a peaceful mind. We have to have inner peace for ourselves. We have greater and greater interest. Everyone has greater and greater interest in developing this, because there are so many more busyness and so many more distractions in our outer lives. And so everyone is spending all their time working. And we lose our happiness. We lose our peace of mind. When I lived back in my homeland, up in Tibet, so every day, people would do maybe 3 or 4 hours a day working, but the rest of the time they'd sit in the sun, drink tea. There wasn't a whole lot of other work to do. But now, when you live in a city, in a single day, you basically spend all 24 hours working, and you still don't have enough time to do everything. You just spend all your time working. So these days, people spend all their time working from hour to hour, and are not necessarily working for things that are absolutely necessary. Because we have so many technological things, and these technological things are so captivating for people. And that's not the fault of the technology. It's not difficult for the machines, but people do get tired, and people do have to take breaks. But if people have to always work like machines, then it will be very difficult for people, and they feel a lot of pain and suffering. So in these recent times, there are many people who work in great factories who have actually committed suicide. Sometimes because they feel so much pressure from their responsibilities that they kill themselves. But it's a lot of suffering, isn't it? So the need for a tamed and peaceful mind is like the root of Buddhism. There's every single word of Buddhism that was taught is in order to bring peace to our minds and to tame our minds. So it's important for us to have non-violence and peaceful. So non-violence, not harming. In addition to that, in the Mahayana, in addition to not harming other, we also have to have altruism, helping other beings. This is like the particular feature of the Mahayana. And so we all call ourselves Mahayana. So there are many Buddhas who have taken the bodhisattva vows who can be called bodhisattvas. And so in order to actually do the acts of a bodhisattva and not to lose our bodhisattva vows, it's important that we actually do at least something, even something small, in order to actually help others. And so when we talk about compassion and wisdom, I actually have a story about compassion. Wisdom is actually, maybe for really smart people, those with the highest faculties, wisdom is maybe easy, but for, regular people, for people with duller faculties, it's kind of hard. And so there's a story about this. And this is a real story, actually. It's not something that's been made up. There's actually a real person. And he became a Buddhist. And it hadn't been long since he'd become a Buddhist. One day he was driving his car down the road, and on that road, and he came to a roundabout on the road. And when he got to that, and from when he came there was a truck. And so when, truck, when Tibetans they say traga, traga. So, we either say traga or we either say truck. We mean a truck here. And then the Khampas, they all say chiten, chiten. So, this is not a very good pronunciation. So in Chinese it's chitra, and in Khampa it's chitamota, chitamota is coming. So it's coming from the other side, and it hit him. And when it hit him, the driver of the truck got down and started making a big scene. Actually, he was the one who had hit the other car when he was going. He was the car driver was just going along, and he was hit by the car. But the truck driver came down and was making a big scene. And the driver was thought to himself, I don't have the wisdom of the Buddha, but I've got to at least train in the compassion of the Buddha. So if I don't train in that compassion, and so he just sat there without saying anything. He didn't say anything at all. And then a little bit later, and then like the police or some traffic cop came by. And when the traffic cop came by, the truck driver continued to say, "Oh, he did this and he did that to me." And at that point, then a really strong, and so the truck driver continued saying, "Oh, this really, the other guy hit me." And then the rain started to fall. And then the truck driver thought, "Oh, it's beginning to rain, so I have to go." When when it started to rain, the truck driver thought that he had to go someplace. But the truck driver was wondering why I'm not getting soaked by this rain. And then he realized he was covered by an umbrella. And then he saw that the driver of the car was actually holding up the umbrella over the truck driver's head. And the truck driver saw this. Like the car driver was getting soaked, and he was completely was holding it over him. And the truck driver felt a lot of regret, and he thought, "Oh, I did all this to him, and I'm doing all this to him, and yet look how nice he's being to me." And then he admitted what he had done. He admitted that he had hit the other car and so forth, and that. So this is one story that is true. So that person there had not been a Buddhist for very long, and did not have the omniscience of a Buddhism. But he was, just by thinking that he had to train in the compassion of the Buddha, even though he not only just withstood and was patient with the truck driver, but he was also kind enough to hold the umbrella over him. So this is like a really special thing, isn't it? So that's what it is. I mean, that's what compassion is. So there's not a whole lot to say. If I speak too much, I won't finish all 7 branches. So yesterday we were talking about offerings. And so here in the aspiration for excellent conduct, I was a little bit wrong in my explanation. In Tibetan, we have 5 Sanskrit commentaries that were translated in Tibetan. That were translated from Sanskrit into Tibetan. There was one that was by Nagarjuna. That was sort of the basis. Then later there's one by Vasubandhu. And these 2 were translated later, probably. They were not translated in the early ancient school. And so this is during the time of the Dharma kings. In addition to that, there is also a commentary by Dignaga. And so yesterday when I was talking about and then there was another by Shakyamitra that was translated. This is the longest of them. Yesterday I was calling him Chushe, but actually his name is Shakyamitra. But in generally, when we talk about it in Tibetan, the Sanskrit commentaries in Tibetan, there are 5 that are present in Tibetan. And then the earliest Tibetan commentary was the one by the great translator Yeshide. And so at that time, there was the commentary by Dignaga, but there was not the commentary by Nagarjuna or Visambhara. And so Yeshide primarily used Dignaga's commentary as his source. So this is also the source of many later Tibetan commentaries. They took the Dignaga commentary as their main source. And so that is basically how it is. Now yesterday during the offerings, it is important for us to make our offerings without any deceit or pretense. And we talk about deceit and pretense. We can talk about deceit through pretense and deceit deceit in terms of our cause, So that is if we give something that is not, if we're not giving something that is not pure, if we're giving an impure offering. For example, this would be things that are gained through a wrong livelihood, things that are gained through flattery, through pretense and so forth, and that are given through that are obtained through wrongdoing. So there are 5 different types of wrong livelihood. So these 5 different types of wrong livelihood are properly taught about in the Abhidharma. They're not taught about in the Vinaya. But generally, in the Vinaya, it's like, if we talk about, they may not be talked about them in the same way in the Vinaya, but they're present in terms of the meaning. These are flattery and so forth. But the closest, the clearest is the presentation that is given in the Ratnavali by Nagarjuna that was taught to a king. And each of these is explained in this Ratnavali, the precious garland. So when you talk about flattery, it's basically flattering people. So it is said that among the treasury that for monastics it's difficult to give up our things of our livelihood, and for our views, and for householders it's hard to give up the things of their lives. And so at any rate, when we talk about it being difficult for householders to give up to give up their worldly views, it's difficult for them to give up the worldly views and to accept the karma, cause and effect. Normally, householders may hold the 5 precepts, or they may go for refuge to the Buddhas, but when they get a small sickness or so forth, they light the incense, make offering flowers, and they go off to make an offering at some temple. And the reason for that, when it comes to some small problem, they look for a refuge, and they don't go to the three jewels, but they go to some other worldly god. It's a sign of not having not having the strong faith in the three jewels. And so that is difficult for householders to give up. Now, it's difficult for monastics to purify their livelihood, to give up livelihood. And so, now, in olden days, the monastics depended upon sponsors and going for alms rounds to get all of their possessions and all their needs. Now, in Sri Lanka and Thailand and Burma, they continue to go on alms round and lead their lives through alms round. And when they go on alms round, in some days when they go on alms, they only get rice and they don't get any dal. Sometimes they get dal and they don't get any rice. Some days they only get vegetables and nothing else. So now we Tibetans have the best of it because we get the rice and the dal and the vegetables, everything every day. But in those places, it's whatever someone gives. They don't say, "Oh, give me this, give me that." It's just whatever people give them, they eat it. And so you might think that this is kind of an aesthetic life, but it's not. We sort of think of it as being. So we spend our time sort of being full of ourselves. But generally, when you talk about living on alms, it's primarily dependent upon the sponsors because it's what they give them. So even when there are when there are great monks who uphold the Vinaya, they still, when they meet a sponsor, they'll still flatter them, be nice to them, even if it's not necessary. So when you talk about flattery, that means being extra nice to someone, kissing up to someone a little bit. So this is, in one way, it's actually not okay for this. But when you have this wish to get something, and you think, "Oh, if I'm nice to this person, they'll get me something too. Oh, maybe I'll get that red envelope, If we then engage in being nice to someone out of that, then that is flattery. Now, then the other is excessive flattery. It's like when you say, "Oh, what you gave us before was really wonderful, that was great." And so that is also a type of wrong livelihood. So now another is to live for things, to live for what we get. There are many different ways of explaining this. So what this is maybe to just give a little bit out and hoping that you're going to get something back in return. So you give a little bit out in order to get something in return. Now, another is when you see someone, you see, like Tashi has its sponsor who's given them something, and then you go up to that person and say, "Oh, that," and then you go to that sponsor and you say, "Oh, it wasn't so good to give that thing to Tashi. You should give that to me instead." Then you can also pretend that you have qualities that you don't. Even you don't have qualities, but you pretend that you do, and you live in this way. And so in this way, these are 5 different types of wrong livelihood. Now, when we talk about wrong livelihood in terms of the treasury of Abhidharma, then it would be like if we use the money that sponsors give for inappropriate reasons, like to go see songs and dances and shows and have fun, then that also could be considered a type of wrong livelihood. And so this is this is the 5 types of wrong livelihood for monastics. In terms of For householders, there's gaining your livelihood through selling other people, gaining your livelihood through selling meat, gaining your livelihood through selling weapons, gaining your livelihood through selling poisons, and gaining your livelihood through selling alcohol and so forth. And so these 5 at least are. And so if you lead your life through doing this, then if you maintain your household through doing this, then this is what is wrong livelihood for someone who holds the lay precepts. So when we talk about deceit and pretense, then, when we talk about deceiving people through the offerings that we make, through what we're actually offering, it's when we make an offering that is impure, then that is a offering in terms of the materials that we're offering. Now, when we talk about a wrong offering through intention, then that is when we are mixed with the 8 worldly concerns, wishing in order that we can have some sort of faith or some sort of pleasure that can come. If we make offerings with this sort of thought, then this is an impure offering. And so for this reason, we need to give offerings that are made without deceit or pretense. And so that completes our the offering. And so following this, we have the confession. So under the influence of desire, hatred, and ignorance, I have committed wrongs using my body, speech, and also mind. I confess each and every one of them. And so this is a story that started in Tibet, that later became a tradition in Tibet. There were people who would maybe, when they who killed frogs or birds when they were a kid, they started a tradition of later regretting it and making manis, doing mans for each of these. And so sometimes, when they see someone who's reciting manis, they killed a frog or they killed a bird or something, didn't they? Now, it's very good to remember this and to confess, killing frogs and birds and so forth and rats and so forth. But what is even more harmful than that is actually, and something that creates the strongest impact on our human life, is when we break any of the 3 types of vows that we might have. Now, when we talk about the 3 vows, now there are many different ways of counting the 3 vows, but generally, we generally talk about the outer individual vow of individual liberation, pratimoksha, the inner bodhisattva vow, and the secret vow of the mantrayana. These are the 3 types of vows. Now, but this is special Buddhist language. But if we put that aside and talk about it in easy terms, in the past you've made a great commitment. You've made a strong commitment. You've had a big promise to do something. And then later you do some wrong that contradicts that or that breaks that commitment. Then this is something that has a very strong impact and a strong imprint on your mind. That sort of a wrong is the most important kind to confess and purify. Generally, when we talk about misdeeds or wrongs, when we think about because we have so many different things that go through our mind, there are so many things that we've done in our life. If we think of the tons of, it's very difficult for us to confess each and every one of them. So you remember as much as you can, then that is wonderful. That is the most excellent sort of aspect of it. But generally, when we talk about misdeeds, we're not talking about each and every single individual. Basically, we're talking about, basically means all of the misdeeds, without any exceptions, that we have committed from beginningless time under the power of greed, hatred, and aversion. And so now we've come to this sacred place. And so here, when we begin to think about all the things that we do, so if we have even something small to commit, we need to confess, then we should confess that. It's even said that the quality of, or the benefit of misdeeds is that you can purify them by confessing. Now, this is not actually misdeeds don't actually have any qualities, but it is said that, you can purify them through confession, and that is a quality. So when we talk about under the power, influence of desire, hatred, and ignorance, so when we use our body, use the faculty of the body that pervades the body, we have the delusion, and so all of the afflictions, all of the negativities are mixed with delusion, because they all come out of mistakes, they all come out of confusion, and so they are not true. And so because they are not true and they all come out of confusion, and they all arise out of confusion, then we could say that ignorance is like the boss. Now, but there also is not any misdeed that we can do under the influence of either desire or hatred. So these two are like the henchmen. So these. And so these are talking about it in terms of our influence. And then how is it that we actually do them? We commit them with our body and our speech and our mind. So these are the ways that we commit them. So it's a question of whether body and speech follow mind, or mind follows body and speech. So these are the wrongs that we have committed. So this is, the intentional karma, the intended karma, and so forth, all the different types of karma. And now, when we refrain from doing it ourselves, but we get someone else to do a misdeed, then that is especially wrong. So, like in my homeland, we don't do bad things at all. But when we have something that we need to do, then we call someone else in to do it. And so, when we get the misdeed from doing that, and the other person does it. So, if you have to butcher an animal, then you butcher if you butcher it yourself, then. Otherwise, if you get someone else to do it, then someone else also has misdeeds, and there's more misdeeds. So that's an extremely harmful wrong. And similarly, there's also rejoicing in the wrongs others have done. For someone, if someone were to beat up or bind or throw in prison or tie up or kill someone who's your most hateful, pernicious enemy, then you think, and then you rejoice in the thinking, you think, that was the best thing that could have happened. Then just thinking that is not good. It is a misdeed. But especially if you then expressed it with your body and speech, clapping your mind, saying, that was great, and then you say something and you say aloud, that was wonderful. Then, as I said the other day, that's really terrible to do. But especially for monastics, there's the different, there's the danger of losing your vows, and it's the same for lay precepts. You don't even have to do anything if you rejoice in this way. There's the danger that you don't have to kill anyone. There's the danger you can lose your vows anyway by rejoicing in this way, for both monastics and lay people. Now, these are the manifest misdeeds that we see, the ones that we can actually see. But most of them are those that are sort of, contained within our being that we don't know about, because from the beginningless samsara up to now, we've done this infinite amount of actions, and so for that reason, we don't know what we've done. Forget about even the actions from previous lives. If you think about the things that we've done in the things from a previous life, we don't remember them. So, but all of the Buddhas who have the eye of wisdom, who see it clearly, who understand everything, can see them. We call them as our witness, and we say, but if for whatever, when we've done anything, there may be things that we have done that we don't see ourselves, that we don't remember, but we can say, you Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, you know and you understand, so you can please see and please be my witness in this. And it is not just us that we have done that, but we can also take all the misdeeds to all other sentient beings and also confess them altogether. And so then we dedicate the confession of our own misdeeds to the purification of all sentient beings' misdeeds. Then it is a much stronger, and it has much stronger virtue and positive energy to make that sort of confession. It's not necessarily going up to someone else and making confession. It's not necessarily that. But it's important that we have this motivation, especially for doing Vajrasattva practice. So for us, so if we think about, so we can confess what we have done, but we should not really worry about what others have done. It's not like we should think to ourselves, oh, they've done this or that or anything. We should not worry about that. So when we are confessing our misdeeds and our downfalls, we do this through the 4 powers. If we do it through these 4 powers, then we will be able to purify each and every misdeed and obscuration we have. And among the 4 powers, the most important is the power of remorse. This is seeing a wrong as a wrong. Seeing your own mistake as being a mistake and then recognizing it is very important. And so if you think that something that you've done that's a mistake and you think, oh, that was great, that was wonderful, that was a good thing to do, if you even have the slightest thought of that, then you won't be able to really confess or purify that misdeed. And so for that reason, the power of remorse. Just as it is said, if you do not have the wish to refrain in the future, you will not be further. So you have to have the power of refraining from them in the future. So the power of refraining in the future and the power of remorse are extremely important. So it's like we're seeing if you do not have the regret, then you'll still have interest and excitement about doing wrongs, and you won't be able to stop that. You will not be able to refrain from doing that. You will not have the resolve not to do them in the future. And so for that reason, we absolutely must have regret. Even if you have regret, though, if you have regret, then the power of the resolve. And then when you have those two, then the other powers will also naturally happen on their own. So the first of the 4 antidote powers, so when we talk about power, we talk about the potential of the power. We talk about the power to be able to purify our misdeeds, and that's why it is called a power. So when we regretting what we have done in the past, so we talk about the results of our misdeeds. We generally talk about the results as the 3 lower realms. There are the 3 causal lower realms and the resultant 3 realms. And the causal 3 lower realms are desire, hatred, and ignorance. And because of these 3, then you experience the resultant 3 lower realms, which are the hells, hungry ghosts, and the animal realms. And so because of the causes, so they don't have all the... So within the 3 causal ones, you have all the features of the lower realms. In general, it is easy for us to see the animals, but it's difficult for us to imagine the hells and the hungry ghosts especially, right? Especially in these days, when people only believe things that they see. People say, oh, where is it that the hells are? Where are the hungry ghosts? Point them out to us, they say. But even before... But it's not necessary to think about hungry ghosts and hells as being somewhere else. If you look at your own misdeeds, if you look at someone who has a lot of anger, he's pretty similar to the hells, isn't it? It's like he's within all of the difficulties of him, because it's like his being is being burned by the fires of anger. So when he's getting angry, it's like he's transformed. And so he's no longer his ordinary person. He's become like someone else. He's become a second person. And and he doesn't have any affection or love in his body. It's like he's got this hot, fiery aspect that comes forward. And so because he has a lot of anger and hatred, you can sort of see him having this sort of aspect of the hells. So I have this feeling myself. Sometimes when we think about what we've done, how we've think of it, if we look back on them, you get frightened of ourselves. Wow, how can I be such a scary person? How did I get to be so frightening? So we need to look over and over again. We need to look at the way we express ourselves and the way we are when when we feel hatred and anger, the words of hatred, the harsh things we have said and the things we have done. Then we can understand what the problems. We can see them as being the great loss of, or the great problem of the hatred and difficulties that we have. But it's not just seeing the difficulties and the problems of this. We have to recognize that the afflictions are something that that we only should give up. If we can think about this, from one aspect it's from seeing them as a problem. But sometimes there are people who sometimes what happens when someone says something wrong or something nasty to you. Sometimes at that point we get angry and get this feeling, if I don't get angry at this point, there's nothing else I can do. And so this is a problem of not seeing the afflictions as being wholly afflictions, as being wholly negative. So at any rate, it's the root is base, and the better and the root is poisonous. The plant is venomous, and you think to yourself that you have to see that as something that is just revolting entirely. For example, if there's someone who has certain, but there's like an example of this. It's kind of a gross example, but there's nothing to do about it. We have to be patient with something. We have to be patient with it. So being patient means that we have to be patient with the things that are disgusting and difficult. So we need to stay there. We'd have a lot of strength and fortitude to be patient. Sometimes, like even if someone's pricking you with a needle or a pin, sort of feeling like, oh, I've got to do something, but I've got to feel like I've got to be patient with this no matter what. It's like the monks from Shaolin. They hold their breath until they hold their breath to make their body really firm and strong, and they beat. And so when they're doing this, they make a sound. They go in order to make their body strong. And so this is like a type of to develop patience. But this type of patience is difficult, isn't it? So when we see the afflictions as being problems, when we see our problems as being problems, it's like the gross example I was talking about is if someone says eat your own feces, then you think about it. Oh, I'm not going to do that. So if someone says eat your own feces, you say, oh, you eat it instead. So there's a story about there's a yogi who was practicing. And so this hunter came along and said to him, and the hunter said, and the yogi was sitting up there, and the hunter said to him, and so the hunter said to him, what type of meditation are you doing? I meditate on patience all the time. And so the hunter said to him, oh, you better eat your own shit. And he said, how do you eat my own shit? You eat shit, So it's like, it's like if someone says you eat your shit, you think, oh, what is this? No, I don't need to do that, So it's sort of like that. It's not. But actually, it's a question of seeing problems as being problems, seeing faults as being faults. That is very important. Then the power of support. Is after we've gone for refuge and bodhicitta and in practice. This also brings purification. But the main thing, without needing to say a whole much because it's not a lot of time, as it said, if you do not have the power of resolve not to do things again, then problems will not be purified. If you commit to not doing something, then if you commit to not doing something and then you do not hold them, and then do not keep it, then it also becomes light. So if you commit not to doing something today, and then do it tomorrow, then it's like you're making a lie to the Buddha, and so that's not good. So that is not appropriate. That should not be done. In the future, even if you are unable to reform in the future, it does not necessarily become a lie. It becomes a way. It's actually a method, a way to purify that. It's not important. If at this moment you, for the very heartfelt devotion, you commit yourself to not to have the resolve not to do it again, then even if you should not think to yourself should end up doing in the future, it's not so important. What's important is the important thing. For example, if you think to yourself, I will not drink tea, then later you drink tea, it doesn't become a lie. You're talking about that moment at that point. For example, if you say, I'm not going today, and you say, oh, I'm not going today, you say, not going today, and you're not going to. But then if you end up going later, it doesn't necessarily become a lie. So some people think of it. So sometimes people think, oh, you have to really hold these resolves. And you think that your commitment to the resolve then becomes some sort of a lie if in the future you have to do that, if you have to go or something. But that is not actually how it is. So if you think, I can't have the resolve, it'll be a lie. That's maybe some sort of an excuse. It's just you're using your words. It's not actually a good sign, it's actually a bad sign. So whether you can resolve in the future, at this moment now, the most important thing is to have that resolve now. So whether you commit or don't commit to something comes down to whether, in this point, whether you have the remorse and whether you have the resolve. But so if wise people even do a large misdeed because they know how to confess this and purify it and regret it, they are able to do and know how to purify it. It is not a very big problem. But the fools don't know how to confess their misdeeds, and so even a small misdeed becomes a great misdeed. So when you confess, when you have the four powers, then the four powers, each of them has its own benefit. They purify the cause, they purify the resultant of the karma, and so forth. So they each have their own benefits. So in brief, confessing and purifying our misdeeds is extremely that. So maybe tomorrow we'll have to talk about rejoicing. We don't have time for today. So the most important thing is that when we have misdeeds, we have to regret them. That is the most important thing. So regret and remorse are very important. Particularly when we have made big mistakes and done big misdeeds. It's feel like we're not able to excuse ourselves for them. When we have these problems that we're not able to excuse them, then maybe that's just too... We think that this human life So sometimes we then think to ourselves, oh, this life has just turned out to be just a mess of problems, a problem to solve. There's no hope except for the next life. But actually, that thinking in that way itself is a big mistake. From the beginningless suffering up until now, until we have come to this life, if we come, completely innocent all this way, without any, and then done a big wrong in this life, that would be a problem. But since from beginning of life from beginning of samsara up to now, we have done, the heap of our misdeeds is bigger than the king of mountains, and so recognizing that we've done misdeeds and understanding that we've done wrongs in this lifetime is extremely fortunate. That's what we need to be amazed about. And so in this lifetime, whatever wrongs we've done in this lifetime, there's no way that it can compare to what we've done in the infinite number of lives. So they're not considerable at all in comparison to the whatever we've done in all our previous lives. And so these are things that we need to. It is important for us to understand these and to give up these things that we've done in these lives. Particularly when we've done something in the past, then we can, if we think that was not good, and then be able to rid our being of the imprint of that. That is very good. What I've thought about in the past is when we confess our misdeeds, it's not like we're getting a knife and then cut the misdeeds. It's not like we're taking. It's like we have to. It's like when we cut a life, we have to. You take a knife, we can cut fruit and cut it in half. It's like we have to take our. Think about it. We need to. We need to cut these two in part. We need to cut our mental stream away from our misdeeds, and we need to then cut them apart so we have our strength. This is me. This is the misdeeds, and then we can then give ourselves a new opportunity, a new chance. And then at that point, only at that point, we have the opportunity to actually to do that. But if we confess and purify our misdeed, but then inside ourselves we sort of hold on to it and ourselves, oh, that didn't turn out good, then we're unable to really rejoice in virtue and do good things. And so when we think, so it's like we happen in Tibet. We now have so many things that happen. We hold on to them ourselves. We think all we have is suffering and pain, and then we hold them onto ourselves. And actually holding on to that in this way is itself a wrong way. And so if we are actually able to if we hold on to things in this way, then it's difficult for us to actually purify our misdeeds and our obscuration. And so this is something that is important for everyone to think about. And so now we will have our meditation. And so the meditation that we will do today. Now our meditation here. All sentient beings in the three realms of samsara aren't just in samsara for one point. They are continuously in samsara. They're living in samsara all the time. But they don't recognize their suffering to be suffering. They still don't know suffering as suffering. And they are here deluded and confused. And because they're deluded and confused, so all of these ignorant people, if you explain it to them, they will not necessarily understand it. They won't listen. And so there's almost nothing that we can do. So if you water in a pot and you put that on the stove, first you think if you're in the water, then think the water is nice and cool. But if you sit in there, but as the moment that at first it's pleasant, but then when you begin to feel the heat of the water, then it's too hot and it's too late at that point. And in the same way, we are in samsara, and we don't. When we are in samsara and we living in samsara, at the moment that we begin to experience the suffering, then it's too late. It's like we're already within all stuck in this fiery pit, and we still have. But we continue doing all the things that bring us endless amounts of suffering. And so all of our mothers, all sentient beings, are in these fiery pits of suffering. And not only that, not only are they stuck in these pits of suffering, they do not recognize the suffering as suffering, and they do not know what they should do or what they should not do. And so thinking about this, we will, if we meditate for 3 minutes, you're going to fall asleep. So we'll meditate for 2 minutes.